Jaya Could the harmonium be taken away so there's space for people to sit instead of occupying that space? And the people that are here, could you move forward a little bit? Because it looks like people will come around the back way. And we need a place for them to sit. This little girl that's seated on the couch, could you not sit on the couch because some old people may need to sit on the couch? Senior citizen couch. Are you going to be okay sitting there, and you're going to be okay? If you get restless, you know what to do, right? You can get restless over there somewhere and be happy. If you get restless. Very studious flow, you probably won't get restless. It looks like there's some persons that are with us this evening that missed part 1 and part 2, and this is part 3. So real quick review, part 1 and 2. Madhurya Kadambini, the title of this book, was written by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. He was in disciplic succession prior to Jagannath Das Babaji. Jagannath Das Babaji is in our disciplic succession set of pictures, generally in our ISKCON altars. A near contemporary of Jagannath Das Babaji was Baladev Vidyabhusan, very prominent acharya, wrote commentary on the Vedanta Sutra on behalf of the whole disciplic succession, very prominent personality. That's a spot that was reserved for Ramanujacharya, Madhurya, Romapada Swami, and Bhartacharya, Vishnu Swami. He did it within our Gaudiya lines, very prominent, very important personality, Baladev. And the person who he learned from and studied under was Vishwanath. Vishwanath, very elevated, very prolific writer. He discussed some of his books, he discussed many of his, he wrote many commentaries on traditional literature, an ardent follower of Rupa Goswami, and this particular book, Madhurya Kadambini, is an expansion of just 2 or 3 verses from the whole of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. One of those verses is the essence of what bhakti is, verse, and Yavidasha Dushunyam, that verse. So far in chapter 1 and chapter 2, he mentioned the verse and expanded its meaning and explained its message. The bhakti is independent. Bhakti is not dependent upon karma, or gyan, or janma, or anything. Bhakti is as independent as Krishna, because Bhakti Devi is an expansion of Radharani, who is Krishna's internal potency. Bhakti is as independent as Krishna is. So how does bhakti begin? That was chapter 1, through association with a bhakta. And some people think other things, and he discusses with other things and rules them out, and bhakti causes bhakti. So we need the association of those carrying bhakti in order to awaken bhakti and to advance further in bhakti. There's many details which we're not going to review. Nice chapter. So now, after bhakti begins, how does it move forward? So, in chapter 2, which we discussed yesterday, he went through the first 2.5 of Shraddha, Bhajana Kriya, Shraddha Sadhusanga Bhajana Kriya. So, the importance of sadhusanga, what sadhusanga is, how it works. I mean, not A to Z, everything, but some basic principles. And then Bhajana Kriya, there are stages of unsteady devotional service, and then leading towards the stage of steady. So chapter 3 is going to be discussing that leading to steady, from unsteady, leading to steady. So that 4th stage is anarthas. It's an important chapter. It's especially important for all of us because that's the stage, more or less, that we're in. So it's really important for us to know. Now, a couple of comments from yesterday's discussion. One devotee shared with me so many terminologies, and it's a complex roadmap, and my mind gets bewildered by seeing all those terms. And I think I'll have a hard time following that. So, this devotee's conclusion was, I'm just going to fix on those 5, chanting the holy name, hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, doing deity worship, maybe those 3, and then, serving the devotees and residing in Naperville, and I'll work on those 5 things. And residing in a holy place. That's number 5. So, then my heart can become cleansed, and as my heart becomes cleansed, then those other features of good qualities become decorations, and I don't have to worry about them separately. It's not, if you don't understand all of what we discussed yesterday, you're not going to be barred from going back to Godhead. There's not going to be a big road sign that says, sorry Charlie, you can't go back to Godhead until you get an A in that exam over there. Not a prerequisite. On the other hand, it's valuable. Here's two examples. It's valuable, it's just like anatomy. Here's a body, and the body is digesting food, and there's this system and that system, and this organ and that organ. It's really complex. And I don't understand all of it. I just use it in Krishna service, and I go. But there are some persons that need to know anatomy. So they study anatomy, and they know how the systems work, how this works, to some degree at least, how this system and that system and the other system work together. And, just today I was at Ritu's place, the physical therapy place, and she knew this terminology, that terminology, and she's sharing with the people that were assisting. And, I didn't even catch it, she said it so fast. Like a certain meniscus tear in a certain place, and, and then these muscles, those muscles are the ones that have to be strengthened, okay? And they go, yeah, okay, because they know the anatomy. Because they have to. I don't have to. But some people have to. So it's a science. Bhakti is a science. It's not just, la-di-da. It's a science. Now, if you don't know all the science, it's just fine. You can go back to Godhead. You have to have pure devotion. What does pure devotion look like? Well, it's a science. Suppose I don't know all the science. That's okay. There's principles, you know the principles, but there is a science to it. And this is a science tool. That's what Rupa Goswami was instructed by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He was told to write books about it. He did. Whew, boy, is it detailed. And detailed and detailed. And detailed. Do you have to know all that? No. You have to know that it's there. And it'll help you understand the brilliance of our system, our devotional system. And if you want to see where you are, even we're fluctuating up and down a bit because we're unsteady, you can see where you are. Here's another example. It's a totally different example. But that other example is this. The Bible, because it's the Word of God, it says God created everything. And He did it in 7 days. And the first day He said, let there be light, and so there was, and it was good. That's all it says. Now, the Vedas also say there's a source of everything, and that source of everything is the absolute truth, and how everything came into being was, Samkhya. There's like this really long, elaborate explanation. How this, and then that, and then that, and then that, and how the whole thing unfolds. And then conversely, how it's wound up. And you pull the plug, and it just goes back to its dormant state. And then there's a resting period, and it's the picture of how God creates. That's Sarga. It's one of the topics of the Bhagavatam. And it details and details and details and details. Now, do you have to know all those details to go back to Godhead? No. But if somebody challenges you, God's the source of everything, what are you going to say? Well, the Bible says so. God's the source of everything. Or Vedas say there's a source of everything. So I just accept it. We just accept it, but there's this science to it as well, how the whole thing unfolds. And as you understand how the whole thing unfolds, wow. Like we had this little discussion in the Bhagavatam class this morning. supposing, because one of the supposes was people that this devotees associates with, the intellectual scientist, says, well, yes, you have to have faith in science, but it's more plausible. The other is like, the little boy lifts the hill for 7 days. That's far more of a stretch. Really? So we went over, the plausibility of modern science. Chemicals get together and form life. Okay, that's your model. Here's the chemicals. Let's see if you can put together life. No, can't do it. Where have we ever seen chemicals produce life? Never, but that's the theory. And then Big Bang cosmology. So that once upon a time, kaboom, Big Bang. And then matter went flying all over the place, and that's how creation began. And then superheated mass cooled down, and then you got an Earth planet. And then there was some water. And really? That's possible? Anyway, without going there. Those that are very, very learned in the science of Samkhya, those are very, very learned in the science of modern science, that the empirical data of modern science have looked at the Samkhya system and it's not falsifiable. And there's many things. I don't want to do a science class. I want to go back to Madhurya. Vedic cosmology. Question: how did they know down to such detail the diameter of the moon, the distance between the moon, the earth and the sun, and that there's 2 different motions of the earth moving around the sun and the sun moving around the earth? How did they know that? How did they know the dimensions and diameters of things? They didn't have technology. As technology is advancing, it's getting closer and closer and closer to the numbers that are there in Vedic science, Vedic cosmology. But how do they get those numbers? It's not just directional, it's numerical, it's empiric information. How do they get that? Without technology. Expanding the capacity of the senses. They didn't have Hubble telescope that could, send around the universe and take pictures and send pictures back over time and measure this, to that, to the other, Now they know things about the universal structure through technology. And the numbers are getting closer and closer to the Vedic numbers. Now where did the rishis get those numbers? They had another system of knowledge than their senses refined through technology. They had no system. And that's this Aparadha Shabda system. So, the bhakti process similarly has its details and details because it's a science. Just like cosmology has its, it may not be your thing to know cosmology, but it's there in the Vedas. Gray's Anatomy may not be your thing, but there's a different explanation of the organs of the body. The ways of describing it is different. It's in Ayurvedic terms, but it's there. And it's a science. There's a science of bhakti. So all this is, if all these terminologies are new to you and just kind of go over your head, don't worry about it. At the same time, it's very helpful to know that it's a science. And as we're going along the path of bhakti, it's predictable. Just like you get out your GPS and you put in the destination, it's predictable how you're going to get to your destination. If your destination is Krishna Loka, bhakti is the method. Get out your bhakti GPS system and you'll find out how to get there. In detail. If you don't know the detail, that's okay. The lady says, or the guy says, and you follow it. Because there's faith in the bhakti process. Because there's faith in Scripture. And faith in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Romapada Swami and his followers. But there are those that need to guide these things, and so that science is there. I find it inspiring, just like Premananda isn't here with us, but I've read this many times, I've taught it many times, and I find it very inspiring. What I've been attempting to do is kind of give a simplified version. Vishwanath gives it more detail than the simplified version, so I encourage you to read and appreciate, with a big wow, where's Vishwanath coming from anyway? He's way up there in the bhakti evolution, and he's reaching down to give understanding and realizations to us. There's a lot of mercy flowing in this book. Okay, so chapter 2 ended with a little description of the stages of Bhajana Kriya moving from unsteady to steady. We're not there yet because the anartha nivritti stage, which is the next chapter, we need to look more closely at the unsteadinesses. And the cause of those unsteadinesses is anarthas, unwanted things. That causes our unsteadiness. Unwanted things in the heart. So, overall the book is discussing, can we get this slide out? This one right here. Okay, great. Stages of bhakti. From Shraddha to Prema, that's 9. And this one is number 4, Anartha Nivritti. Chapter 3 is stage number 4. Here they are. Adau Shraddha, that's the first one, faith. Tata Sadhu Sangha, that's number 2. Bhajana Kriya, number 3. Anartha Nivritti in yellow letters, that's 4, etc. Nishtha Asakti Bhava Prema. Here's the translation. In the beginning, one must have a preliminary desire for self-realization. This will bring one to the stage of trying to associate with persons who are spiritually elevated. That's 2. In the next stage, one becomes initiated by an elevated spiritual master, and under his instruction, the neophyte devotee begins the process of devotional service. Now, this is Prabhupada's translation, and we don't find diksha or spiritual initiation in there. It just says Bhajana Kriya, but that's where it happens, in the Bhajana Kriya stage. Then, Anartha Nivritti. By execution of devotional service under the guidance of the spiritual master, one becomes free from material attachment. So we'll just go on. This Anartha Nivritti is anartha is unwanted things. Nivritti is clearing of unwanted things. This stage overlaps many higher stages. So what that means is, it's not a bucket. It's a stage, and it actually begins even before this formal anartha nivritti. It begins as soon as there's some association. Someone takes their first bite of a samosa. Anartha nivritti has begun. Prashada, of course. Or they hear the holy name. Anartha nivritti is happening already. So it's not. And then further stages and further stages. It's not like, oh, I already did that one, what's next? It continues, it expands, but it's a prominent feature of this stage that comes through Bhajana Kriya. Then, Vishwanath asked the question, good question, where do these things come from? Where do these anarthas come from? Well, there's 4. This one is really easy to understand. It may come from sinful activities. This is a little more difficult to understand how it may come from pious activities, from offenses, and from bhakti successfully performed. We discussed this a little bit, and we're going to go into the details of these 4. From sinful activities. Now yesterday, one of those mind-boggling lists that you got a handout of included this first one, the results of kleshas. You remember from yesterday. Kleshas, kleshagni is one of the 2 things that happens even in the beginning, the sadhana stage. The 2 leaves unfurl. One leaf is eradication of sins, kleshas, the suffering that come from sin, and the other is shubha dha, the awakening of all auspiciousness. So, the kleshas, pious activities, have results, sufferings have the results, or they're caused by sinful activities. That list, I'm not going to go into it because I got a little feedback that says I'm bewildered by these lists. But ignorance, false ego, attachment, hatred, fear of death. Remember that? Okay, so we won't go through it again. So, good news. You engage in devotional service, and the reactions of sinful activities can remove the obstacle on the path of bhakti. The reactions of sinful activities are dissipated and removed. From pious activities is a little more difficult to understand. That's addiction to enjoying the results of pious acts. So, piety bears fruit. And the fruits of piety, when people have fruits of piety, there is a tendency to be the enjoyer of wealth, or beauty, or knowledge, capacity, and so forth. Joy are the fruits of past pious deeds. That's an impediment on the path of bhakti, or just a kind of pervasive enjoying sattva-guna things in a material way. And then this desire for liberation, it's also a fruit of piety. Vishwanath says sometimes this one, this desire for liberation, is put under the klesha category. It's klesha because in that common sense of sayuja mukti, or merging with Brahman, there's no service. There's no relationship with Krishna. Krishna disappears. So that's a misery. There's no opportunity for loving exchange with Krishna, no thank you. Then, where anarthas arise from offenses. So there's seva aparadha, those of you that know nectar devotion a little bit. There's 64 items of things that you should do that help in bhakti. There's some offenses to be avoided also, big long list. Seva aparadhas. But the good news is, bhakti process cleans away the reactions of seva aparadha. At least those that are not deliberately done. Because if they're deliberately done, it becomes another category of nama aparadha. So therefore, the chapter focuses largely on nama aparadha. That's another type of offense. In this case, Vishwanath clarifies, nama indicates, or it represents, all of the 9 limbs of bhakti. What are the 9 limbs of bhakti? Shavana Kirtana, Vishnu Smaranam, Padasevanam, Archanam, Nasyam. Okay, you know the list. 9 angas of bhakti. So of those 9 limbs of bhakti, nama is in them, and nama indicates or represents all of them. Any one of them can just destroy anarthas. However, the primary anga of the 9 is the chanting of the holy name. Namadi, beginning with the name. The focus in this chapter is going to go to the nama aparadha. To neglect, this is a spontaneous devotional service message. To neglect the angas of bhakti out of enthusiasm is not an offense. Supposing somebody is in a bhava bhakti stage, and they're just in ecstasy, and they neglect one of the rules of devotion. They don't brush their teeth or something. They're too busy being in ecstasy. Right? They don't take the morning bath because they're rolling on the floor in ecstasy or something. There's no offense, and there's no reaction to that offense when they're in that spontaneous stage. He makes reference, you can look it up later if you like, it's Canto 11, Chapter 2, verse that says basically that. The verse says, one who closes their eyes and runs. Engaged in devotional service with eyes closed. Not literally, get in your car and close your eyes and engage in devotional service. But it's a literary way, a metaphorical way of saying, if you're in this ecstatic space of devotional service and there's some detail that you overlook, there's not an offense. Closing the eyes and running while eagerly pursuing the goal does not result in offense. Quote Sridhar Swami saying that. And then the fourth one, we touched on this yesterday, but when you're really successful or you begin to become successful in devotional service, things may start to come to you. Oh, you're such a nice devotee, or here comes some money, or here comes some position, or here comes some respect, or here comes something. And one starts to think, oh, this is pretty good. That's an anartha in the heart, to be the enjoyer of the fruits of bhakti. The fruits of bhakti for Krishna, for Krishna's enjoyment. So, the focus now goes to this third position, where anarthas arise from nam aparadha. And he chooses to start with what he calls the most vicious, and that's sadhu ninda. Sadhu ninda. Offense against the devotees of the Lord that is done with animosity. Vilification. But often we will translate that as criticizing or vilifying. And with the specific, in Vishwanath's case, it's with animosity, like ill feeling towards. There's backroom gossip, this person, that person stuff. That's not to be done also. But very specific in Vishwanath's case is where there's animosity towards the person. The person isn't being negatively impacted. The person who's speaking that way is being negatively impacted. That's an offense. Then there's a remedy. And the remedy is you take shelter of that very same person. And who that person is, well, it doesn't just mean, the super advanced devotee. I can criticize those that aren't super advanced, that's okay. That's not what it means. It means any devotee, anyone who's carrying bhakti for Krishna in their heart, that's a sadhu, by definition. They're attached to sadhu. Not only the pure devotee. And the remedy goes, you go to that Vaishnava and you appeal to the Vaishnava. Express specifically, this is the wrong that I have done, and I'm seeking excuse. It's not just, Prabhu, I've been offensive, please excuse me. Could you explain to me what it is that you're asking to be excused from? Because they may not even know what they did. You know what I mean? It's not just put your hands under the faucet and turn the thing on. You should know what it is that how you got your hands dirty. And you seeking being excused or pardoned from a specific thing that you may have done that got your hands dirty. And supposing you say, well, this is a very advanced devotee. So they certainly, I don't have to go ask them for forgiveness because they're not going to hold anything against it anyways. They're naturally forgiving. I don't have to ask them. And Vishwanath says that compounds the offense. You should. And then it compounds the offense also to, well, that person who I offended, they have defects. And not only this one, that one, the other one, and so it minimizes the offense that I made. That's another offense on top of the offense. And Vishwanath says that a Mahabhagavata Vaishnava, even if because of their forgiving nature, they forgive you, the dust of the lotus feet of that Mahabhagavata may not forgive you, and therefore take shelter of the feet of the dust of the Mahabhagavata Vaishnava. So that he takes it very seriously, and we should take it very seriously. The instruction is here in the extent that it's given, because it's very important. On the one hand, we require sadhusanga. It's right in the text, and it's also common sense. Bhakti begins through association with those who are carrying bhakti. But then we start associating with bhaktas and we started making offenses. There's unintentional ones, but unintentional ones just mean there's no offense. You step on somebody's shoe, your foot, you don't think, oh, it was a mistake, I don't have to say excuse me. You say, excuse me, that your foot hurt, I'm really sorry. It wasn't intentional. Now there's intentional, there's their foot. Bam! That's, more grievous. So the unintentional, intentional. We need the association of devotees, and we bring devotees together, as is happening in this community, and there's going to be toes being stepped on. It happens. It happens to us, and maybe we don't even know it. We're stepping on other people's toes too. Maybe. Probably. Without our knowing it. Or may even be with your knowing it. What's up?
Can you move it some, speak a little in this side? There is volume is less.
How are we doing? The sadhu ninda, that's of the 10 offenses. It's stated right here at the very beginning. Most vicious. So he gives a lot of attention to it. It's easy to spend a whole class just discussing that one. But we're not going to do that tonight. But it's very important. Here's some of the other in the list of 10. Considering the demigods to be equal to Krishna. We're not disrespectful to anyone, even an ant. And we're not disrespectful to the demigods. They're far more than an ant. So commensurate to their position, the respect is given. But what Prabhupada writes in Bhagavad Gita is worship is, in devotional service, is for Krishna. Here's how he handles this. There are two types of jivas, those that are covered and those that aren't covered. And those that are not covered, there are those that are in Vaikuntha, they're influenced by the Aishwarya feature of Krishna. And then there are those that are not influenced by the Aishwarya feature of Krishna. And that the category of those is largely in the Goloka realms. They're influenced by the Madhurya feature, the sweetness feature of Krishna. Specifically, he touches upon the topic of Lord Shiva, what his position is. He is not to be considered equal to Krishna or Vishnu. The Vishnu Tattva forms, each one of the Vishnu Tattva forms are in the same category as Krishna. So worship of Hayagriva or worship of any of the forms, Matsya, Kurma, Nrsimha, they're of the same tattva. That's not an offense, but to consider others, Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, etc., equal. Here is from the scriptural reference. One who considers Lord Brahma or Lord Shiva and other demigods at an equal level with Lord Narayana is certainly an atheist. That's from Vaishnava Tantra. Okay, so then another. This is offense number 4 in the list of 10. So he's not going to cover all of them or even necessarily numerically, chronologically. So number 4 in the list is disrespect of the Vedas. Now he covers this in a very interesting way, like this. The portion of the Vedas that deals with karma kanda is vast. How much? Over 90% deals with rituals, how to propitiate different devas to get this, that, and the other thing. Vast portion of the Vedas. We should not disrespect that vast portion of the Vedas, nor those that follow the vast portion of the Vedas, the followers of the Vedas, because they're respecting the Vedas. Now, how clearly they understand that portion of the Vedas, that's another thing. But they have some regard for that portion of the Vedas. Because the Shrutis do not directly mention bhakti. Instead, the Shrutis emphasize karma kanda. Still, we shouldn't disrespect the Shrutis because that's what they do. See them as steps on the yoga ladder. Interesting, huh? I mean, from Bhagavad Gita and Prabhupada's discussions of chapter 7, chapter 9 of Bhagavad Gita, Kamais taishtar jnana prapadyante anya devata, various devatas is due to kama, or lusty desire within the heart. Kamais taishtar jnana prapadyante anya devata. Persons take shelter of various devatas because of strong material desire in the heart. And without reviewing everything that is said in Bhagavad Gita about that, it's not so complimentary. That's Krishna. But those that are doing that, on the other hand, those who worship the demigods, they're in the mode of goodness, at least when they do it and when it's done properly. It leads to the mode of goodness when done properly. Someone may not yet be in that mode, but it leads to that mode. Goodness. And goodness is good. So one shouldn't disrespect that which leads to goodness. It's not the essence, but it's a stepping stone towards the purpose and the goal of the Vedas. The purpose and the goal of all the Vedas, even this mode of goodness and demigod worship, etc., the karma kanda section of the Vedas, is to bring one to the position ultimately of devotional services, because through devotional service Krishna can be known. Vedaishtasaya vairaham eva vedyo. Eva vedyo. The purpose of the Vedas is to know Krishna. So those who are following other process that gradually, many lifetimes, may take them to the position of knowing Krishna through the medium of devotional service. That's not to be disrespected. So it's an offense to disrespect. We should know its relative position, but we don't disrespect. Interesting. How to nullify this offense? Praising the Vedas. By praising those who practice and teach the Vedas. Removal of anarthas. Now, here's a chart. I'm a little nervous about charts now from what the feedback I've had. Oh, I'm feeling overwhelmed. But here's a chart. And the main thing to take from this chart is this column that says from nama aparadha. So the eradication of anarthas is in degree, almost complete, absolute. Partial, complete, absolute. Now, nama aparadha is far more serious. You have to go much further to get it to the absolute position. So that from the chart, nama aparadha is really serious business. That's the takeaway from this chart. So in this chanting of the name, bhajana kriya, partial. Nishta, pervasive. Ruchi, almost complete, complete. And then, absolute. Lotus feet of Krishna. Even beyond the prema stage, or the mature stage of prema, is absolute. So keep going, devotees. Don't be discouraged if you're somewhere back in that chart. Keep going. You know, what do you do when you recognize da-da-da? Keep going on. If you follow the indications of Rupa Goswami, you'll get to the absolute position, Krishna's lotus feet. That's Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's gift. Just say yes. Recognize what that gift is and say yes. Then he covers some interesting, what if, this and that. Can anarthas arise even after attaining the lotus feet of the Lord? And the answer is no. Saying, well, what about, Chitraketu? Well, Chitraketu, 6th canto Bhagavatam, King Chitraketu got mercy from Narada Muni. He became a Mahabhagavata devotee. And then he only apparently, made a defense against Lord Shiva. Parvati cursed him, he became a demon. He hadn't offended Lord Shiva. It was Parvati's mistaken understanding of King Chitraketu. So he became a demon. But when he became a demon, he retained his prema. So after attaining the lotus feet of Krishna, he didn't lose it. Although he became a demon, he didn't lose his bhakti. Then he gives the example of Jai Vijay. Elsewhere, it's in the Bhagavatam, but here he presents it in this book. they also made an apparent offense only, which was caused by their prema. They offered a prayer. Oh, Lord Narayan, we understand that you have this chivalrous nature, but who can be a fit combatant for you in your chivalrous nature? If you like, if you so desire, you can diminish your affection for us, allow us to take that role. We'll become inimical to you and give you a tussle, if you so desire. Because we know you have this chivalry, so it's just to serve him. Interesting. And so, to oblige their desire, and he did in fact have this combat chivalrous, this is secondary rasa. It's in the Lord. He's this sort of raso vaisaha, right in the Upanishads. So here's another doubt. This is Vishwanath having fun and helping us to understand the bhakti process better. How can there be any remaining anarthas for one who chants the holy name? Like, Jamila chanted Narayana, and we heard what happened. The agents of Narayana came and they rescued him. So after that happened, how can he still have residual anarthas? How is that possible? The answer is, the holy name, being unhappy with the offenses made against it, does not manifest its power to the offender. Well, wait a minute. The Yamadutas are powerless to attack such persons, that we heard. Yamaraj said to the Yamadutas, leave them alone. And the Vishnudutas told them, leave them alone. So, they were protected. And Ajamila was protected. And then the answer Vishwanath is giving, even so, intervention by the Lord of Death, Yamaraj, and other means of purification cannot free him from the anartha. That is to say, after Ajamila was saved, what happened? He had to go do Vishnu Bhakti. He got out of his deathbed and went to a Vishnu temple in the Himalayas and engaged in devotional service to Vishnu. And then the anartha was removed. He was protected. And do offenders lose the mercy of the holy name? Yes, Vishwanath answers. And he gives two examples. Supposing there's a wealthy man, wealthy and capable master, and then there's a servant who makes some mistake, and then the wealthy person says, he just neglects him. But the servant wants to please his master. So the indication, he gives this explanation, just goes on serving, goes on serving, goes on serving. Even if he's being neglected by his master, he goes on serving, and eventually the heart of the master becomes soft, and he again accepts him, stops neglecting. And therefore, when there's anarthas, it may take some time. Usually it takes a lot of time. But although it's gradual and it takes some time for the influence of anarthas to subside, continue with the process of serving faithfully. That's the example, worldly example to explain. Mercy is lost, but it can be regained. Follow-up question. Can one who commits Namaparad become averse to the Lord, to Guru, and devotional service? The answer is yes. And he gives the example. Supposing you have fever, you lose your appetite. That which can restore strength to the body, you have no appetite for. And even if you take it, you get worse. You don't eat when you have fever. You're not hungry, and you shouldn't eat. But if you take the right medicine when you have fever, and be patient over time, the fever will subside, appetite will restore, and gradually, with proper medicine and patience, then good health is restored. So the effectiveness of the bhakti process, chanting, and the other features of the bhakti process may be, to a degree at least, withdrawn for the offender. Similarly, continuing to chant even without taste, but for purification, that is, taste or mercy, will gradually return. The little subnote. Repeated doses of hearing and chanting the Lord's name and other such processes then gradually reveal everything. So it's serious business, but there's a way to deal with it. Why doesn't defenseless chanting of the holy name eradicate all anarthas immediately? Whoa. Well, as a fruit tree bears fruit only in season, so also Nama Prabhu reveals his mercy upon the offenseless chanter in due course of time. You can chant, this is a little cute saying, you can chant Hare Krishna, but it doesn't work to say Hare Krishna. Sins committed in the past due to bad habits are harmless, as the bite of a serpent. Bhagavatam says, sickness, lamentation, or other sufferings of a devotee are not due to prarabdha karma. Rather, the Lord is showing His special mercy. We discussed this prarabdha term yesterday. It means reactions of past karma that's happening right now. Prarabdha. And those things, for a devotee, is not prarabdha karma. We may speak like that. Oh, you know, my bad karma, something. But Krishna is showing His special mercy, and it's special mercy to help the devotee take deeper shelter of Krishna. That's all. And bringing them closer to His lotus feet. So, conclusion. We're about to end, so get ready. An offensive devotee may appear to suffer more than a non-devotee. The Masterful Lord may send these sufferings with the plan to increase such a fortunate devotee's humility and his longing for the Lord. That's this. It's not prarabdha karma. How to see it differently. When confronted with sufferings or reversals, an offensive person may lose taste within all devotional activities. They lose sight of Krishna's mercy. That's like because they hurt either their body or their mind, or both. Offenses are the reason why no symptoms of prema are experienced when performing hearing and chanting. Someone can say, well, I've never made any offenses. And in my heart there's no reactions to offenses, no anarthas in the heart. That's dreamland. Okay, so that's the next chapter. That's the summary, concluding message of chapter 3. So we can turn the light on. Nice topic, huh? This chapter, please read it. I mean, I wasn't so specific. Please read it several times because it's the stage where we are, and we need to understand where we are. The gravity of offense against the holy name is very, so he doesn't cover all 10 of the 10 offenses. It's a serious subject matter. To progress further, to go, so on the other side of this is the steady stage. And that would be nice to be steady. And it's a sign of one has made some progress, that they're very steady in their devotional service. And so preceding steadiness is faith, faith that has matured. Even when there's bumps in the road, faith continues on the authority of Scripture and the faith in the bhakti process and the sense of shelter in the Bhagavatam, Guru Sadhu Shastra, etc. When becomes practiced at taking shelter of the holy name as a source of strength and purification. So, any discussion?
Guru Maharaj, yesterday after the class while going back home, me and my daughter, we were discussing, reviewing what we heard. At that time a question came up, so I just want to present that question. First, it's a statement, whether the statement is correct or wrong. Based on that, the question I'll ask the question. For the sinful, there are sins that devotees know that we should not do this, based on we are hearing and we are reading the scriptures. But there are a lot of people out there who don't know what is, for them drinking alcohol is, that's right.
Okay. Yeah.
So, will they get the same reaction if they do that? Because they don't know, like ignorance.
Yeah.
Will they get the same reaction?
No. The answer is no. It's like, those, the part of the suffering is the ignorance itself. But those that are doing things because they don't know better, the what's the word? Commensurate with your understanding, and you do, you're more culpable than if you didn't know. No, they're both punishable. You can say to the officer, gee, I didn't know the speed limit was 55. You're supposed to know. Anyway, I didn't know something. The ignorance of the law is no excuse. But if I didn't know, it's more than premeditated. I knew and I did it anyways. Like murder. Degrees of murder. And so the penalty is greater depending upon the degree of intention behind the act. There's unintentional, and there's intentional, there's premeditated, etc. So more culpable for those that know when they do it than those that don't know when they do it.
I have one question on today's class. We were talking about sadhu ninda. I'm seeing that most of the times devotees who are not at home, family, we are very careful, not to offer.
And then we get home, we just...
So, even family members are devotees.
Yes.
But there is a lot of possibility that we create offenses.
Yes.
So, will we be inflicted on that? How to get out of it?
How to get out of it? Take sannyas. because where there's familiarity, it breeds contempt, and or just casual. No, it's natural. The expression that Prabhupada uses is in a bamboo forest, the wind blows, and this bamboo knocked into that bamboo, there's a big sound. But it's just the wind blowing in the bamboo forest. It's not so. In family dealings, it's invariably going to happen. The wind blows, and some members of the family, are in conflict with another member of the family for whatever the. So you tolerate those things because it's just part of what it means to be in a family, to be together, so close together, and respect, and then then proper communication when something needs to be communicated, done in an effective way, an affective and effective way. The affective is with respect, and effective is you let some things go and some things become more important, and those things that are more important, you make sure you say these things, for me, these things are more important. And it can be, two ways. Meaning this member of the family, that member of the family. So that we can understand one another and maintain this position of respect. So if you value the relationships and respect the soul and the bhakti within the soul that's in that family relation, that's way up here. And then the other things can be easily handled if that's intact. When that gets diminished because of bodily identification and then all the other stuff that happens with that, false ego and stuff, my territory and stuff like that, then it's a breeding ground for unpleasantries or offense. So respect and value of that relationship and wishing to serve one another, each of the family members wishing to serve one another as a family value, to serve one another to get closer to Krishna. Now if that can be promoted, then everything can be worked out. It's not, we still have to be cautious, starting with respect. And say, Krishna is to be pleased by our coming together as family members. That's our value. Bhakti value. Doesn't mean, okay, everything go smooth. Doesn't mean that. But it means everything can be addressed properly. Microphone up front.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Sickness and then suffering is Krishna's mercy for the devotees. That was the previous slide.
Yes.
Is it for the pure devotees or mixed stage and unsteady stage devotees?
Everybody. No, again, this like the first question your husband asked, or you and your husband and your daughter were discussing. There's degrees, but it's not that it's only for pure devotees. There's degrees, but it's not that it's only for pure devotees. You and I may need a stronger reminder than Haridas Thakur.
Guru Maharaj, based on the same question, if sickness and they are not like the result of raga for devotees. I was discussing with Jack. So does it mean that it also impacts or changes our future?
Could you elaborate your question? I don't understand your question.
So future meaning like if one goes to an astrologer and he says that this is a devotee's astrology cannot be predicted. Is that correct?
Those are two different questions, isn't it? I can address what I think the first question is and your second question. I don't see how the two connect. Here's Prabhupada's statement. It's really simple. Prabhupada, should we consult an astrologer? Prabhupada, if you know that it's going to rain, you may carry an umbrella. So, astrology says, by looking at the influence of the stars, these are influences that are likely to take place. And then you can make some choices. Doesn't mean because you're a devotee, there's no influences that are going to take place in your life. But the power of bhakti can help you rise above those influences so they don't influence you the same way if you didn't have bhakti. And bhakti can change your karma. So karma is a combination not only of astrological influences, but the flow of events based upon those influences. Let's say, for example, a car accident. Now, some devotees have died in car accidents, but many devotees have not even gotten a scratch in a car accident. And the car's tumbled over and over, the car's totaled, and not a scratch. Now, what's that? They were protected somehow. And these aren't, these aren't Haridas Thakur in a car. This is Prabhu's. They were protected. That's the karma protection. But so the essence, it's not. You become a devotee, and it's not like there's no astrological influences going on in your life. The stars are what they are. There's influences going on what they're going on. It's not everything in a devotee's life is determined by astrology. It can be the intervention of Krishna, setting things up so that something bring you closer to him somehow. Okay? Behind you.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. So, in one of the previous slides, it said that...
Is the microphone on or no?
Yes.
In one of the previous slides,
it said that sins in the past are as harmless as a snake without its fangs.
yeah,
So my question is, from my understanding, the way karma works is that chanting and devotional service, it prevents you from incurring more karma. It doesn't get rid of your previous karma.
you're wrong. Your understanding is wrong.
Okay.
The reactions of past sins are nullified. It's not generating further, and the reactions of past sins are nullified by the bhakti process. Yes, very enthusiastic hand waver over there. Leave it on, she won't know how to turn it on. I knew she wouldn't know how to. Okay.
and so much time lost. And
It's not time lost,
I mean,
it's time gained.
instead of progressing in the bhakti towards, that is, so many inroads are there.
Well, we have a lot of unclean things to clean up. That's why it takes a long time.
Okay. So my question was actually, in the last verse of chapter 2 in Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavan says, even if you remain in this consciousness for the last hour of your life, you will be able to enter the kingdom of God. So I was thinking that our consciousness is so not tuned at all during all these years of bhajana kriya and.
Okay, so get to the punchline.
So why does it take so long?
Why does it take so long? Because we have a lot of cleaning to do.
But when Krishna says in that 1 hour, even in that last 1 hour of your life.
Well, I don't know what Krishna says in the last 1 hour of your life. You can point out to me the chapter and verse, I'd like to see it.
Chapter 2, verse number 72.
In the last 1 hour, Krishna says.
Yes.
No, he does not say. He does not say. Okay, give the microphone to somebody else.
Read 72, right? Read 72, right? 272.
Yeah, even at the hour of
That is the way of spiritual and godly life, after attaining which a man is not bewildered. If one is thus situated, even at the hour of death, one can enter into the kingdom of God.
Okay, situated at the hour of death doesn't mean, okay. That's not what he says. It's a phrase, it's a language terminology that says, we say the last moment, or the last hour, the last phase, the last portion, the parting consciousness of the living entity is fixed in this way, they can attain the Supreme. So there's the steps before attaining the Supreme, or attaining that consciousness, and that's the purification. That's the topic. And why does the purification take so long? Well, the real answer is because we're attached to the impurity. That's the real answer. Well, a shorter answer is, well, there's lots of impurity. But a more realistic answer, the amount isn't exactly the obstacle. It's our attachment to the impurity. There are some things that we are attached to, every one of us. And that's the problem. That's why it takes so long.
Maharaj, I was just thinking about the devotees when they suffer, it's Lord's mercy. But when non-devotees ask, like, why do you suffer? How do you respond to them?
When non-devotees ask, why am I suffering? Or why are devotees suffering?
Why does devotee suffer?
Well, it depends on the person you're speaking to. Not just, you're playing a shell game, but you have to understand that when you're addressing anybody, what you want to do is nourish their faith. And you don't want to nourish their faith by something cosmetic. You want to nourish their faith based upon something that you understand about that person. And that, the capacity of that person to understand whatever it is that you might say. You want to nourish their faith. That's the objective. So how you would answer depends on the person and what's going to help them. So if they're a more elevated person, you can say something that the less elevated person couldn't understand. The more elevated person, you can help them understand. Actually, it's a form of Krishna's kindness to that devotee when they're put through some ordeal, that the intention behind the ordeal is not cruelty or punishment or something, it's bring them closer to Krishna. Now, a more elevated person you could perhaps explain in such a way that they'll understand. Or at least not just go, off on you. Well, how can you say that? Or something. And so for another, let's go the other direction, someone is not so advanced. We all need purification. So if you're a devotee and you're undergoing some difficulty, it's part of the purification process. This is something that I say to myself and say to others. I'm responsible for my past free will choices. And the responsibility may come this way, that way, the other way. But I'm responsible for my past free will choices. So now that I become a devotee, it doesn't mean I don't have responsibility for my past free will choices. I'm responsible. And then individually and collectively. Our whole country is involved in... So I am sharing in that collective karma. And I bear some responsibility. So what am I doing about that responsibility besides taking on some hardship because of that past free will choice individually, collectively? I'm choosing consciously one thing, going forward in time. That's the devotee is moving out of that space of free will choices being misused. That's the life of a devotee. And so it depends on the person. And there's other things one can say depends on the person. Okay, up front, and I think we'll end here. Keep passing it along.
So in one of the previous, Hare Krishna Maharaj, in one of the previous slides it said that anarthas cannot arise after attaining the lotus feet of the Lord.
After doing what?
Anarthas cannot arrive after attaining the lotus feet of the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
So how is it that we lost our...
Do you mind if I, read Bhagavad Gita chapter 13 where the term anadi karma is explained? And you'll get the answer to your question.
Chapter 13.
Chapter 13, I'll show you afterwards. Anadi, chapter 13. So there is, this, you will have something different, right? Good. Let's do this something different question.
Song.
You're on. Go.
Went off.
Let's go right on.
Hare Krishna. Maharaj, is this understanding right that bhakti has the potency to remove the reactions of past sinful activities?
Yes.
And pious activities?
Yes. Not the tendency to be the enjoyer of the past pious activities, yes. Bhakti is replacement of that tendency to be the enjoyer of. So the fruits of piety will come when you're a devotee, but the tendency to be the enjoyer of the fruits of that piety, bhakti, will remove.
Is that how? The reason I'm asking this question is in the conversation between Narasimhadev and Prahlad Maharaj, Lord Narasimhadev says that blesses Prahlad Maharaj that he would enjoy, he would become happy.
Yes.
Of the pious activities.
Yes.
That
And he has no desire to be the enjoyer of that. It's in one of Prahlad's prayers, chapter 10. One who has no such desire can be the bearer of opulence of Vaikuntha and not be disturbed. And that's basically what happened. He had no desire to be the enjoyer of that. So here's all this opulence. And, protect your bhakti by always remembering me. You're playing with Ganga on your head. Usually it's the knees. The trick microphone.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, after hearing this from about anarthas and aparadhas, after doing practicing the devotional process, when I get busy with life, I don't even realize what happened then.
Yeah.
So
Autopilot.
So how do I try to understand where it went wrong or what happened exactly?
Well, where you went wrong is your conditioned soul, like all the rest of us. That's where it went wrong. And where it went wrong is you forgot Krishna. Bahir Mukha Jeev, that's where it went wrong. And that's also an answer to your question. Bahir Mukha Jeev.
I mean, not at the beginning, Maharaj,
It's going on. It's not just the beginning. It's moment to moment. Bahir Mukha Jeev. And we're just doing a rerun. Repeat, 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 repeat. And so the requirement is turn your attention again to Krishna. And I'm into this repeat program because I'm a conditioned soul. So it's a conscious effort in devotion to Krishna, because that's who I am in the heart of hearts, is I am connected to Krishna. And I forgot.
The reason I'm asking is because it is important to apologize or explain why you did something, what you did, how you offended. So sometimes I don't even realize if I made any mistake or anything.
Now that you're speaking to living entities or Krishna?
No, to the living entities, who I am coming across. So suddenly if I see a lot of change in my consciousness, and today I feel very enthusiastic and I love, but other day I don't feel it, so I start thinking where it went wrong. So how do I...
We may not be able to trace out where it went wrong. The pervasive one is the tendency to be enjoyer, abhinivesh, asat, trishna, a thirst for being the enjoyer. It's just, you just go there. So, what was the point when I went there? It's just a tendency, a conditioned soul tendency. And exactly at what moment did I go there is not so important, it's just the tendency. So here I am in my tendency zone again. Now, pause, step back, hit the reset. And you keep doing that. How many times? Many times, unlimited times. And then it becomes natural, because it is natural. And that will diminish the other tendency, the conditioned tendency. The bhakti can remove that. Just like, this mode of goodness, or whatever it is, the modes of nature influence, the false ego influence, the mind influence. It's stronger than us. Where did it begin? Where did I go wrong? It's just, it goes back to the original, and it's the continuation of the original. We've been doing it for so long. Who knows how long? Anadi, that's how long. You paying attention? Anadi, that's how long. There's no anadi, it's without beginning. And we're just continuing the without beginning program. the bhakti solution will be stronger than the analytical solution. Okay, we're going to end. Srila Prabhupada.
Romapada Swami Maharaj ki jai.